Hi, and here we are ready to continue with Reb Nosson, Likutey Halakhot, and we are up to chapter 12, and it's in two parts. Chapter 12 is in two parts, and we are going to do as much of the first half as we can, and then we might take a break and continue the second half in another installment. So this chapter is all about the 4 Parashiyot, the additional Torah passages that are added onto the Torah reading, just like the maftir is added on, or as the maftir, in the month of Adar. So there are 4 Shabbos in Adar, and each one has a special reading read on it, which gives that particular Shabbos a specific name. So they are Parshas Shkalim, which is dealing with the half a shekel that the Yidden gave to the Mishkan as a way of being counted. Parshas Zachor, which is us remembering what Amalek did to us after we crossed the Yam Suf and were on the way to receiving Torah. And Parshas Para, which is all about the commandment to take the ashes of a fully red cow and use it for purification. And the last one is Parshas HaChodesh, which is all about the celebration of the new month. So each one, Reb Nosson will explain how each one is another way for us to understand this incredible chiddush or ongoing theme of his, that we bring the redemption. We help the sun of Geula rise when we can do a very specific kind of thing. And that specific kind of thing is finding the good in ourselves, and he calls it the Nekuda Tovah. We find the good in ourselves, and we also look for and find the good in others. And not only that, but we look for and find the good in creation. And starting with the smallest, tiniest amount of good, we look at it, we connect to it, we bond to it, and from doing that, we are empowered to actualize more good within ourselves and seek more good in the world and recognize more good in others. And this is our constant theme. And it is amazing how Reb Nosson is able to bring this theme into so many different aspects of our Yiddishkeit. And now he's going to bring it up, he's going to bring it into these 4 different Parashiyot, these 4 different mitzvot, or 4 different parts of Jewish halacha practice, whatever, and describe to us in a beautiful way how each one of them is an opportunity to see how the seeking out of the Nekuda Tovah is going to play out. So the first one is Parshas Shkalim, the first Shabbos of Adar, Parshas Shkalim, which speaks about the half a shekel contribution to the Mishkan, which Reb Nosson teaches us is connected to the mitzvah or the concept of tzedakah. And okay, so first of all, one of the reasons why they gave, Reb Nosson explains, or the footnotes explain that one of the reasons why, it's just general knowledge, I guess, why the Yidden were giving the half a shekel was that it was a form of a consensus, a census of the Jewish people, a way of counting them. And because we have an idea in Jewish tradition that we don't actually count people, we don't say 1, 2, 3, 4. There's some negative bad luck that comes from counting people like that. The way the census was taken, that each person gave half a shekel, which was donated to the Mishkan, and in that way the census was taken. But Reb Nosson brings up a different idea here, apart from the idea of the census, and he says that this giving of the half a shekel is really symbolic of all of tzedakah in general, because we're giving of ourselves to something else. In this case, the half a shekel was of ourselves, and giving it to the Mishkan. Then Reb Nosson connects this idea of tzedakah to Avraham Avinu, and he says that Avraham Avinu performed tzedakah and chesed with the whole world, through which it is possible to find the good points in everyone, as we have already seen. So Avraham is that aspect of chesed alive and well and living in the world. And because he was so fully committed to this path of chesed, he in a way enabled chesed to be revealed into the world. And not only that, but he enabled all of us to connect to our aspects of chesed and our capability to judge and see with chesed and activate the good within ourselves. Then Reb Nosson describes something about the power of tzedakah, which is very beautiful. And he says this connection between tzedakah and finding the good points is indicated in the verse about Avraham. Now, this is kind of a confusing pasuk, but he would, it's a pasuk from Yeshayahu, and it says he would call tzedek to his foot, called tzedek to his foot. In Yeshayahu, the pasuk is, who roused a man from the east, he would call tzedek, justice, to his foot. This is a little complicated. I'm going to try and read the whole paragraph and then describe it. So this teaches that through tzedakah, we can call forth the good that falls to the lowest level, which is represented by the feet. Now, this is a little complicated, and the way it's explained is that tzedakah has the same root word, the same shoresh as the word tzedek. And tzedek, right, what is right and just, sometimes what is right and just can come across and enter into the world in a way of strict justice, strict gevurah, justice, that can be meted out in a way that can be heavy. It falls down to the ground. It's kind of connected in this way to the feet. It's in specific, the way it can come down, there's an idea that, let's just say, the way it can come down, it falls to the lowest level. It's oppressive, it's judgmental, that's its job, and it can come to all the way down in its manifestation. That's tzedek. Tzedakah, on the other hand, is going to be able to lift that up, lift a circumstance where the judgment of a circumstance would pull things right down into a place of harsh judgment and, God forbid, even possible punishment. The act of tzedakah is going to lift it up and make the situation much lighter and elevated and, in a way, redeemed. Now, the historical fact upon which this explanation is based is Avraham, who rejects idolatry while he's in Aram, the east. And Rabbi Nachman has teachings that relate Avraham's rejection of Avodah Zorah which is something negative that's falling very low, to the act of giving tzedakah. The act of giving tzedakah elevates Hashem's glory and his malchut and rescues it from a descent into the lower realms. And also it says, in the mystery of her feet descend down to death. This is from Mishlei. Tzedek, uncompromising justice, is transformed through tzedakah, an act of kindness that calls forth the feet and raises them up from an aspect of her feet descend. So really, if there's even a judgment, God forbid, that somebody is supposed to die, God forbid, and the judgment is falling all the way down, it might be righteous in some way, it might be what the person deserves in some way, but it's falling all the way down. The act of tzedakah can kind of catch it and elevate that tzedek through tzedakah, bring it up into a much higher place. So I am open to the idea that there might be something else in here that I'm not fully understanding, in which case I'm open to anybody assisting and illuminating any points around this topic. But that's the way that I'm understanding it at this point. And then we'll see further on that there's another explanation, another connection of this idea of tzedakah elevating something that is kind of going downwards, and the act of tzedakah helps to redeem it and bring it up. Just before I continue inside, the idea that when a person gives tzedakah, they also connect to the Nekuda Tovah within themselves. And if a person, God forbid, is on a pathway going down in some way, away from godliness and away from holiness, the giving of tzedakah is going to be able to catch that person, so to speak, and bring them back up by the act of tzedakah, connecting to their Nekuda Tovah and empowering their Nekuda Tovah and bringing them upwards. So inside this idea that Avraham, who would call tzedek to his foot, that teaches that through tzedakah we can call forth the good that falls to the lowest level, which is represented by the feet. This is also connected to the act of Ruth, who came into the tent of Boaz and uncovered her feet, Boaz's feet, waking him up, reminding him of his opportunity to redeem her and her family. And in doing it, it says that was her act of chesed. And in doing that, she gives Boaz a chance to redeem her, do this great act of chesed, and elevate himself and her in the process. And we know from that union came the ancestor of Mashiach. So it says, this is elsewhere hinted in the Rebbe's words, where he teaches that by giving tzedakah, this is what I just said, we awaken the good that is become concealed and hidden in places that seem most distant from Hashem. So if you imagine, so just the same way that Ruth uncovered the feet of Boaz and wakens him to his opportunity to redeem her and to fulfill his path, his part in her story and the story of redemption, that was her act of chesed. So too, when we give tzedakah, we awake and arouse parts within ourselves, particularly the Nekuda Tovah, to do good and become good. So that's really beautiful. And this is the idea of giving the coins to the Mishkan, because as we've explained so many times in previous classes, that when the Yidden felt broken and down after their incident with the golden calf, sinning with the golden calf, Moshe reminds them of the inherent good, as a tzaddik does, that they still have the capacity for tshuva. They connect to that within themselves, and giving and donating the half a shekel to the Mishkan is connected to that idea that they were connecting their own good points. Okay, so moving right along, coming into the second Pasha that is added on during the month of Adar, we have the reading of Pasha Zachor. And we know we read Pasha Zachor to remember the terrible attack from Amalek, whose gematria we know is connected to Safek. Amalek attacked us when we had just crossed the Yam Suf and we were full of glory of Hashem's protection. They had the chutzpah to come and attack us. So we read this after, says Reb Nosson, because through finding the good point and arousing the good point within ourselves, we then have the capacity to defeat Amalek. So Reb Nosson explains that Amalek personifies the force of the Sitra Achra, and he's getting, Amalek takes his strength and he wants to find the weak amongst us, the ones who are cast down and spiritually weak. And you can see here, not in touch with the Nekuda Tovah, not in touch with feeling okay, the ones that have given up hope, that feel like we don't have a Nekuda Tovah, chas v'shalom. So it says, Amalek says, he cut off among you all the weaklings when you were faint and exhausted. So that's referring to those who were lacking in spiritual strength and trying to bring them down, cut them off, make them feel isolated and alienated. But when a person merits finding a good point within himself, he can defeat Amalek. So that's why we read the Pasha of Amalek. One doesn't want to give in to that voice, because the idea that Amalek cools you off, that you were hot and passionate for Hashem, you were enthusiastic, or you can be enthusiastic in your connection. But if you lapse in, to mix a metaphor, feeding the fire of the constant fire of the Mizbeach, if you lapse in feeding your fire and you start cooling down, you start getting distant, doubts start to come into your mind. And when you cool down, that's when Amalek comes and he cools you down. He cools you down so much that he almost, he kills you with apathy. He kills you with self-doubt. He kills you with doubting the veracity and the value of your actions. So very important to fight this. And of course, the fighting of Amalek is the fight against the death of the Nekuda Tovah. As we know, Moshe had to stand with his hands held up, and when his hands got tired, he had relatives holding his hands up. So that holding of the hands up, looking upwards, encouraging the Yidden to look upwards. For us, it's encouraging oneself to be hopeful and optimistic and trusting in not just our Nekuda Tovah, but God's grace, and that we're deserving of his saving. Everything that's Amalek stands for is exactly the opposite of what empowering the Nekuda Tovah is all about. And then moving on from that to Pasha's Para, and we won't do the fourth one in this session. We'll save it for a different session, all about Rosh Chodesh. It'll be very special. But the last one that we're going to talk about now is the Paraduma. Now, the Paraduma is the mitzvah of the all red cow, the cow that was completely red, and not even one single white hair. And the mysteriousness of this commandment is that when the Yidden needed purification after contact with the corpse, or other reasons that they became tuma, tamei, tumadik, tamei, they had to come to the Kohen, who would have had this completely red cow and then burnt it, and using the ashes of this completely red cow, the person who was tamei would become tahor, would become pure. Now, the interesting thing about this amazing mitzvah, which was given even before the Yidden came to Har Sinai, is that the person who was Tameh, the Jew who had come in contact with something impure like a dead body, would become tahor from encountering these ashes and all the things involved in the ceremony. And the Kohen would become impure from helping this other Jew get his rectification. The Kohen himself would become impure, and then he would have to go through his own purification process. So the idea is that Reb Nosson brings this idea that when we talk about the red cow, there's an aspect of red and an aspect of completely red, completely and wholesomely red, altogether red, that we have a juxtaposition of red suggesting a hard judgment, and the altogether, the completely red, that aspect of completeness indicating a soft judgment. And Reb Nosson uses this idea to talk about the fact that the red cow would atone for a person who's feeling contaminated. And in that freeing of a person becoming redeemed from his contamination, Reb Nosson brings the point, and it's a very interesting point, that finding the good in oneself, if one has been contaminated, will be a way of finding cleansing and will bring a person from a place of feeling and being tameh, impure or alienated or down or whatever, and heal him and bring him to a place where he's no longer feeling contaminated or is no longer actually contaminated. But the person who feels that not only are they looking for a small Nekuda Tovah to heal them, but a person who feels like they're so full of their Nekuda Tovah, they're so absolutely righteous, they're feeling so secure in their righteousness that they become arrogant or they become overconfident in their righteousness. So for that person, that aspect of the Nekuda Tovah, which has become inflated and over expanded, could actually contaminate the person, could make them feel that they need to be brought down a peg. So for that person, the teaching, even if the entire world says to you, you are righteous, you should see yourself as if you're not. So the same way that the idea of the paraduma can help the person who's down and out and bring him up, if you're too attached and too confident of your Nekuda Tovah, it could actually bring you down. And that's just an interesting parallel or corollary to, I don't know if that's the right use of the word, to the paraduma and the process of the paraduma. So both ways, thinking that you're completely down or that you're completely, not needing any help at all, each one is not an ideal path. So that's the part that's connected to the paraduma. I'm going to end this teaching here, but looking forward to sharing with you the beautiful idea that comes with the last Parsha read in Adar, which is the Parsha HaChodesh, all about Rosh Chodesh and the diminishment of the moon. And just to give you a little appetizer, and you can fill in the rest, and I know that when we bless the new moon, we're not blessing a big fat moon, right? A fully expressed moon. We're just blessing a teeny tiny little bit that starts to show. The first little bit of moon that shows, that's when we give it the blessing of the month. And so I can leave it to your imagination how Reb Nosson is going to discuss that in connection to our ongoing theme. So once again, thank you so much for listening. If you like this class, please like it. And if you feel like it was beneficial, share it. And hope to see you soon. And be in touch with me about what's happening for Rosh Chodesh Adar, because I do hope to do something either on Zoom or in real time Thursday night Rosh Chodesh. All right, all the best. Thank you so much. Thank you for listening. Kol Tov.